In Our Town is presented by the Springfield Daily Citizen. We believe good journalism brings the issues to light, but great journalism brings communities together. Visit us online for in-depth local journalism and more at sgfcitizen.org.
This is In Our Town, and I'm your host, Tom Carlson. Today, my guests are Kim and Tom Prater. The Praters are physicians and longtime residents of Springfield, well known for their community involvement and philanthropic work. Tom is the citizen chair of Forward Springfield, which is the master plan for development of the city for the next 20 years. It is the successor to the city's Vision 2020, which guided city planning in the early 2000s. Most recently, Tom and Ken agreed to lead the $25 million capital campaign for the Springfield Art Museum. Tom and Kim, welcome to In Our Town.
Thanks, Tom. It's great to be with you.
Tom, I know that you see some linkage between the capital campaign for the Art Museum and Forward Springfield. Maybe you could speak to that.
Well, there's a lot of linkage because Forward SGF is our comprehensive plan looking at the next 20 years of Springfield and what will it be like. And what we're trying to do is make Springfield a cool place to live and to work. Well, the Art Museum is a critical piece of that. It's not everything. It's not economic development. It's not trail systems. It's not quality housing and affordable housing. But if you want to attract the kind of people that we want to have in Springfield, if you want to get the college grads to stay in Springfield, if you want to have people with families moving here to work and live, you've got to have a good art museum. So it's a perfect tie-in.
Kim, I know that you and Tom have been big art collectors for a long time, and in fact, I think you have a collection of ceramics that were a show in years past. Tell us a little bit about your interests in the Art Museum and why you decided to head up this campaign.
Well, I think in part comes from our love of art, and as you mentioned, most of our art is contemporary ceramics. It brings both the sculptural component of art as well as the painterly component of art. In order to build on what has existed previously, you have to keep moving forward, and the museum needs to move forward. The building is old, there's not adequate gallery space, and it needs to tie in better to the vision of Springfield. Where it's located is perfect for that. It ties right into the park, to trails, unroofing the creek. Just that vision of what could be in that part of town, proximity to the university. If you love art, you want to see it displayed and shown the way it should be shown in an environment that people of all ages can enjoy and that can introduce people to art, how to make art, how to appreciate art.
How did you all get interested in art in the first place?
Well, it seemed like every time we went somewhere, we traveled, we'd go to an art museum and realized that, there are certain things we liked and certain things we didn't like. And my mother at that point was just beginning to collect contemporary American ceramics, and my father was collecting wood-turned pieces. We enjoyed that, but then we went to Watercolor USA because we were brand new physicians, had student loans, a lot of wall space, and no money. We took Watercolor USA purchases the first 4 or 5 years we were in Springfield and used those to decorate our house. That was a lot of fun and a great tie-in. And then we just both have developed an interest. When we both see something we like, we know we have to buy it. There's stuff that I may like that Kim doesn't, vice versa, and so we'll put those on the back burner.
And I will say that I think one thing that got us started in art through your mother and ceramics was one of our first holidays, be it birthday or Christmas. I think Tom turned to his mother and said, I have no idea what to give this woman as a gift. And she pulled out a pot from an artist that she particularly enjoyed and said, why don't you go look and see what this artist is making? I think Kim would like this. So that was our first piece of ceramics, was a gift from Tom with Marie's suggestion.
My wife enjoys art as well, and we've collected some things over the years, pretty eclectic, but for us at least, the pieces of art, they become your friends. Kind of, in a sense, you feel as if just part of your home and a little bit of your family. And what I think is interesting about it as well is some pieces maybe you don't respond to originally, and then as you get to know them more, they grow on you. Have you had that experience?
We have, and we move them around sometimes. And it's, oh yes, this looks better here than it did in the other room. We loaned about 20 pieces to the art museum for a show about collectors a few years back, and it was wonderful to go to the museum and see them in a totally different light, a totally different presentation, and then to see little kids standing there. I snuck up behind them. I said, "Oh, do you like that? What do you think about that?" And they could respond. So yes, they do change. You live with them, they change some more. You put some in a closet for a while. You bring something back out. It's fun.
Now, I think the art museum was founded in about 1928. Is that about right?
Yes.
That's correct.
A lot of people don't know it, but we're fortunate in this sense that the original founders of it were able to convince the community to support the art museum with a small property tax. And I think that's been really good for the community. This is almost 100 years later. What is the vision for the new art museum?
Well, it's a $25 million expansion and we're calling it the 2028 campaign because we'd like to have this completed by the time of the 100th anniversary of the Springfield Art Museum. We've got some structure that was built in the 50s. We've got some structures that were built in the 60s. It was added on to in the 80s and again in the early 2000s, I think. There needs to be some uniformity. There needs to be a impressive facade and entrance, maybe with a cafe and gift shop that could be a funding source. So the time is good because we're looking at a 100th anniversary, and I think for this $25 million, we can really take this to the next level of art museum.
You had a large foundation gift to get the thing kicked off. Tell us about that.
The Sunderland Foundation out of Kansas City gave a large gift to get some of the initial work done, and some of that's actually been completed. The city of Springfield has been very good about the infrastructure, the grounds, the unroofing of Bassanite Creek. The art museum was found to be in a floodplain on the latest FEMA map, and you can't have an art museum in a floodplain. So that had to be fixed. The state of Missouri has seen fit to fund part of this and to give some tax credits for donors, so that'll be helpful. And I think when you look back at the vision from 1928, they realized we had no place in Springfield to really look at art. Had to go to St. Louis or Kansas City to see a museum.
One of the nice things about our art museum is that it's free for people to go see. Will that change?
No plans for that at all. We'd like to have it remain a community asset, and community asset needs to be available to everybody when and how they want to approach it.
You know, in art museums, some places you get a sense, well, you go to look at a bunch of stuff on the wall, and that's kind of the way it's been to a large extent. But the vision that you all have is it's going to be more interactive. Am I correct about that?
That's correct. One of the oldest parts of the museum is the educational wing. It's concrete block construction that was built in the 50s. There aren't enough classroom spaces to adequately teach any sort of art classes. And the other thing that the museum supports is school visits. Elementary school kids come in to visit, and there's barely enough space to entertain those kids and feed them a lunch and do all the things that we need to do. So yes, the docents give tours, the docents give interactive programs with the elementary school kids, art classes in the summer. Well, if you have good weather, you can go outside. Otherwise, you're out of luck because the space is limited.
You've got the amphitheater that's on the west side of the building. What are the plans there?
Well, that will tie into both the building and the Greenways Trail system. It's a dual-purpose thing. We've got a trail that will extend from the Art Museum clear over Bassanite Creek to Parkview High School. The amphitheater can be used for event space. It can be used for outdoor art shows. And the Hatch Foundation was very generous in kicking in a large donation to help fund the renovation of the amphitheater. the Sunderland Foundation, apparently the grandkids remember their grandfather, Mr. Sunderland, playing catch in that
Is that right?
amphitheater. So that stimulated the Sunderland Foundation's grant.
We'll be right back after this short break.
Hi, this is Rance Berger from the Springfield Daily Citizen. I'm here with my friend and colleague, Corey Madison. And Corey, you and I made history here at the Daily Citizen.
That's right, Rance.
The first duo to have a double byline on a story.
For journalism people, or at least for this journalism person, that is the dorkiest, coolest thing. We each put in some work onto a story and get it in the best shape to put it out there into the world.
Teamwork makes good journalism, and our team certainly can't do our jobs without the help of subscribers like you, subscribers to the Springfield Daily Citizen. In Our Town listeners can get 15% off an annual subscription by going to sgfcitizen.org/town. That is 15% off an annual subscription at sgfcitizen.org/town.
And I'd like to point out that I think I was the first name on that double byline, the first one in history. You might have gotten the first billing on one that's followed.
That's all right. Second billing is still pretty good.
Moving back into the Forward Springfield planning, this ties in with the trail system, does it not? And tell us a little bit how that might work.
Well, the trail system will eventually run from near Bass Pro Shop all the way up the Grant Avenue, and that's the Grant Avenue Parkway project that is talked about in the comprehensive plan, hook into the Fast Night Creek Trail that will bring you directly to the Art Museum or go on to downtown. So basically, we hope to have an interconnected trail system that it maybe doesn't encircle the city, but you can imagine going from Lake Springfield on by foot or on a bicycle up to Bass Pro, over to the Art Museum, to downtown, up to Commercial Street. So the closer you tie all these spaces together, the more attractive it is for visitors and for citizens for people who live here to be able to see everything.
One of the things in Forward Springfield that I hear people talk about frequently is developing a sense of place. What is meant by that?
Well, that's a great tagline, but what I think the whole sense of place issue is, 3 generations before us developed Springfield as an attractive place to live and to work and to be. Our generation has to take that vision and say, let's make Springfield the kind of place that we want our kids, our grandkids, even future generations, what would they like to have to live here? So a sense of place, I think, grounds us in one place. It provides the amenities that we think are needed. If we go to St. Louis or Kansas City, we go for a reason. We go because it's a cool place to visit. So Springfield needs to be that kind of place too.
I was familiar with the Vision 2020 process that occurred many years ago. There were hundreds, if not thousands, of people that participated in that to develop that. Tell our listeners, if you will, sort of this, what kind of process went into creating Forward Springfield?
Well, a very similar process. We had a citizens advisory committee of 25 or 26 people that were able to interact with the design and plan consultants out of Chicago. We had forums where hundreds of people participated and gave their input. And then we had online access for, I think, 4,000 people access the comprehensive plan process online to give input. And they said several things. They said we need to improve walkability. We need to improve the entrances into our city, the entrance corridors. We don't want our first-time visitors coming down some terrible road with blighted buildings and no streetlights. They said we need to find a way to make this comprehensive plan enable more affordable housing. Not that we're going to build houses for people, but let's look at the infrastructure of this city, zoning laws, regulations, all that, see what we can do to make more affordable housing. And when you look back at the Vision 2020 and see the things that have come out of that, the Jordan Valley project, the ballpark, the Greenways Trail System as we know it, all those wouldn't have been possible without a plan. We had a visit here from a mayor, former mayor of Oklahoma City, And one of the things he told us is that great cities are intentional, they're not accidental. So unless we're going to have a planning process with input from people who live here, we're not going to be able to pull this off.
You know, if you were speaking to a city planner 30 years ago, some of the ideas that we're talking about, I think, would make him a little nervous.
Yeah.
I remember from my days on city council, the planning thinking process was we want to put the commercial all around the commercial, industrial together. We want to have a step down in zoning, so you have single family homes and then apartments and then maybe a business and then move forward. But that's not how it's envisioned nowadays. And a good example might be where you all live, it's in the Roundtree area, and what's happened at Cherry and Pickwick. That's a good example of the kind of development that this new plan envisions, is it?
It's a perfect example, and every neighborhood wants that corner. Every neighborhood wants a corner like Cherry and Pickwick, because you can walk to a restaurant, you can walk to a bar, you can walk to a music venue, and you can do some shopping there. And we're used to people saying, "Oh, we've got to get in the car and drive 20 minutes to the mall." Well, is that the best way to spend your time, your efforts? Is that the most environmentally friendly way to live your life? So instead of putting a bunch of businesses here and a bunch of houses here, can we do form-based planning where the lower level may be retail or restaurant, the upper level may be apartments or lofts or something like that? But you have to be intentional about that. You can't just open things up to a free-for-all, or it will look like the mishmash that you see in many cities that don't have form-based zoning.
Yeah, that's a good word for it. I remember years ago I attended a presentation by the Brookings Institution that had studied development in Missouri in general, and they talked about developing an exit ramp economy. And what they meant by that was that years ago, a lot of people would move to the suburbs because maybe the housing was cheaper and they wanted to have big yards for the kids and so forth. But the money that they would save in housing, they lost in transportation costs. So it was a net zero, and frequently at the end of the day, all you've done is spend an hour in your car commuting. I think this plan takes that phenomenon into consideration, does it not?
It does, and it looks to say, what if we're not such a car-centric society? What if people are biking or Ubering or ride-sharing to their jobs? Do we need to have all this massive amount of parking? Do we need to have streets that just quickly get you out of town? And when you look at cities like Oklahoma City and Tulsa back in the 60s and 70s, they put all the one-way streets downtown, took all the parking off the streets, because the whole goal was to get you out of downtown and to your home as quickly as you could. Well, that may not be our goal here. Our goal may be to encourage you to walk from your loft or your house to your work, and then stop by the restaurant on your way home, or grab a beer at the brew pub, instead of mass exodus out of town, and you've just spent 30 minutes in your car, and what in 10 years could be $20 in gas to get home.
Right. Can you imagine 30 years ago if we were trying to pass an ordinance saying electric scooters are allowed to travel up and down all our roads? I'm not sure that would have passed got council approval. Things have changed.
I think you're right.
Back to the art museum, how are people's aspirations and predilections different now from what they were in terms of the kind of amenities that you all are trying to develop here in Center City? Is there any kind of consensus that's developing with the younger generation?
I think so. And when you see art museums now around the country, think back again 30 years or 40 years. You went to an art museum, you were supposed to be very quiet and look at paintings of old people on the walls, and they were on horseback, and it was supposed to mean something to you. And you thought you were cultured because you went to this sort of art museum in New York or Boston or wherever. But now what we see is people wanting to interact more with artists, with art materials, to have more, instead of looking at a painting of an old man on the wall, to put something in context of the culture we live in. So if it may be 4th of July, sure, you're going to have some historical displays that may point to the founding of our country. If it's Black History Month, you may feature some Black artists who have made significant contributions to the arts community. I think people expect it to be more, what am I trying to say, contemporary and interactive.
Well, I think one thing people are looking for is a connection of today's art to the art from yesterday. How do you juxtapose the two? How do you put them together and compare them? And I think museums are doing that more and more. You don't have one section for, Renaissance artists and one section for the sculpture. You combine the two and you put them side by side and you compare how our perspective of the world has changed by seeing two examples of the same thing or same concept, but side by side.
Are there going to be any efforts or plans to get art out into the community more? On the one hand, in the old days, you would go to the art museum, but will there be any effort to maybe share some? They've got quite a collection there, and share it in other venues.
That hasn't been talked about specifically, but when you look at the sculpture walk in Springfield, that's been going on 5 or 6 years now, and many of these sculptures are now permanent fixtures on different sidewalks and street corners in Springfield. So you can see something like that tying together, and you can see as the Greenways Trail system develops, why couldn't you have an artwork when the trail crosses Campbell Street and have something cool there that made people stop and think, what is that and why is it there? And so I think that's a great possibility for the future.
One example of that, I believe it's a bunch of Bingham paintings that are in Carthage in the City Hall. I think I don't know much about art in terms of what its value is, but there are several paintings down there that are worth lots and lots of money. And I think still a lot of folks are somewhat intimidated by the art museum. They just think, well, I'm not one of those people that goes there, and they don't want to feel embarrassed by not appreciating something. And so to go out into the community in various ways so that you can draw them in and create, frankly, a greater sense of community by bringing people in and maybe lead to that sense of place that Forward Springfield is trying to create.
Well, look at all the Thomas Hart Benton paintings around the state in public buildings and our state capitol. So if the art museum has the resources to move that art out into the public more, that helps all of us appreciate it. And that also draws people back to the art museum saying, oh, I heard the art museum has 2 more of these things that I'm seeing hanging in City Hall. So we should go over there and check it out.
You talked about the large leading gift from the Sunderland Foundation, but also I believe there's $2 million in state tax credit that are awarded through the state. I think it's the Missouri Development Finance Board, if I recall. Those are a really good deal for people that are interested in making a big gift. As I understand, they want to talk to their own CPA, but you can, if for every $100 you give, it really might only cost you $30 really out of your pocket because of the tax benefits. Are you getting some interest in that, and do you think those will sell out pretty quickly?
I think we're getting a lot of interest in that. In fact, that's how Kim and I made our contribution. We took some stock we had in an investment account that had appreciated, donated that to the Art Museum through the Missouri Development Finance Board. So number one, we did not have to pay capital gains had we sold that stock outright. And number two, for every dollar we gave, we get a 50-cent tax credit on our Missouri state taxes. It's a great way to do it, and those have had attracted a lot of attention. And the state of Missouri has been very helpful in making that an easy process.
I'm sure there's some things that I haven't asked you that you would like to emphasize.
I think the reason we got into this is really that feeling that, okay, we came to Springfield. I was born and raised here. Kim came here, and I came back in 1987. So we're living in a city that our parents, our grandparents, and even the generation before that helped build and develop and create whatever they thought was appropriate sense of place at that time. Well, if we just sit and stagnate with that, we're going to be a city that exists from the 1930s or 60s or 80s, whatever it may be. I think we owe it to the future generations to build on that and have Springfield to continue to grow and prosper and not die off. You see towns all around Missouri and all around the U.S. that have had lack of interest, either from businesses or residents, lack of interest in maintaining or improving the quality of life there. And if we don't actively do that, we're going to be sitting on the front porch of the nursing home in our rocking chairs in 30 years saying, well, Springfield, it could have been a great place, but why didn't we get it together and fix this or build this or do this? And we'll regret it. I think now the Art Museum, the Forward SGF Comprehensive Plan, a lot of those things are pushing us forward. And I think that we're at a tipping point now. The momentum is building, the economy is strong, employment's good, the city finances are in good shape. So now is the time to kind of make this leap to the next iteration of Springfield.
Well, one thing's for sure, you can't rest on your laurels.
Absolutely.
Businesses, cities compete as well. We don't live in a bubble. We live in a global economy, and we need to be aware of that fact of life, I think.
I think the only way to keep people here, to keep young people staying after they finish college, university, and to bring in new businesses and to provide the work system, the workforce that's needed for the industries we have, is to provide the amenities that people are going to find in St. Louis, in Kansas City, Tulsa. We have to continue to grow to keep people coming, grow in terms of what we provide. Drop into the museum, see the rendering, see what the grounds are going to be, see how it's going to tie into Phelps Grove Park and then on into the rest of the Greenway system. And I think that if people will stop in and take a look, I think they will find that they're genuinely excited about the possibilities of what the museum could provide within the community.
And click on sgfmuseum.org and you'll get all the information you need.
Well, again, I want to just say how much I appreciate the involvement of both of you in your community. You show up in so many places trying to make our city a better place. You set a high bar for the rest of us.
Well, coming from you, that's an honor.
We thank you. We've learned it from you. So.
Thank you. That's it for this week, folks. Many thanks for listening. If you'd like to listen to other episodes, you can visit the Springfield Daily Citizen website at sgfcitizen.org/NRTown or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.